I've got a fever, and the only prescription is to talk about Olympic hockey.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Tuesday edition of Locked On Oilers. I'm your host, Nick Zararis. I've been doing hockey content for almost 10 years now. I want to thank everybody who makes Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Now that the playoffs are over, the sports stop sporting like we want them. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day all summer long. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. Today's episode, very straightforward. We are going to be talking about international hockey that is looming on the horizon, not in the too far distance. We're going to talk about the Four Nations Showdown this upcoming season, and then the 2026 Winter Olympics, which are a year and a half away. But with the summer games going on right now, I have really gotten my heart set on the NHL not messing this up this time around. So first segment, we're going to talk about the grandeur, the spectacle, why it matters so much to get these NHL players on the international stage in front of a more casual audience. The second segment, we're going to touch on how the Oilers are going to be so well represented at these Winter Olympics 2 years from now and the Four Nations Showdown next year. And then the last segment, we're going to talk about what it means. And I know that sounds a bit abstract, but you'll want to stick around for talking about that, because when it's time to spin a narrative, to spin a yarn, and I get into a zone, it becomes very fun. So let's start here. It's 2024. We have not had NHL players at the Winter Olympics since 2014, the games in Sochi. We have not had a best-on-best international hockey tournament since the World Cup of Hockey in 2016, which didn't really live up to the grandeur of best-on-best international hockey because there was a Team Europe and a Team North America. And granted, you see over my shoulder here, the Team North America Connor McDavid jersey. Team North America might be the best marketing ploy the NHL has ever come up with, and then they did as much as they could to make people forget how cool it was because, oh, wait, no, actually, we don't want to do international tournaments anymore because our owners don't want to do that. So I do think it's important to understand why the players care, why it matters so much. And to do that, you have to understand what it means, what representing your country means, the memories that these guys have grown up with, have been told about, the 1972 Summit Games, the Canadians coming back to beat the Russians. If you're American, the 1996 World Cup of Hockey that beat the Canadians in the final. If you want to talk about Sidney Crosby's golden goal in 2010 in Vancouver, TJ Oshie in the shootout in 2014 in Russia, all of those moments, those individual moments, or, the Miracle on Ice. There are so many iconic moments you can point to in the international scope. And when the NHL players go to the Winter Olympics, hockey dominates the conversation because that is what the media entities in North America have the most familiarity with. They don't need to bring on temporary people. They don't need to bring on outside news media people that are more familiar with other sports to temporarily cover it. It's very easy for NBC to do hockey because they have done hockey in the past. And there's an entire network of people in the United States and Canada who have covered hockey extensively and done play-by-play, between the benches, all of that stuff. So it's very easy for them to translate it, to make it Americanized, to make it North Americanized, and give it the mantle it deserves. And that's really the key. International hockey is the best showcase you are going to be able to have for your players. And let me tell you why. In an ideal world, the NHL's All-Star Game would resonate. The players would care. The games would be intense. The showcase of skill would be apparent. But this is a contact sport. These players make too much money to try full throttle in a game that does not count. In a game they are not being extraneously compensated for, in a game that is outside of their contract, a game that a lot of these guys try to actively avoid. Ovechkin has skipped it more than once, ate the suspension for a regular season game, as opposed to going because he just doesn't care. I know Nikita Kucherov was lampooned horrendously for his effort in the skills contest. I know Sidney Crosby got some flack for people in the media for not showing up until the day of the All-Star game itself. So with that in mind, this gets buy-in. We know this is something the players have really wanted for a long time. We know this is something that they made concessions for in CBA negotiations to get back to, because we have gone 2 full Olympic cycles without a best-on-best NHL tournament. There are players out there who are in the NHL right now who may be close to the twilight of their careers that have never gotten to represent the United States in an Olympics. You can think about guys like a Dylan Larkin, a Chris Kreider, maybe a Brock Nelson, who in the scope of their careers, right now, they probably would not make the Olympic team. But in 2020, in 2022, in 2018, those guys would have had reasonable chances of making those teams. Maybe TJ Oshie gets another moment in there. Maybe you talk about some of the guys for international teams, obviously. I meant like European teams, maybe Draisaitl can sneak the Germans into a third place game, that type of thing. Matt Zuccarello's legacy is the first real Norwegian hockey player of note. The Swiss with Hischier and Roman Josi, Jonas Siegenthaler, they have put together a nice little portfolio of NHL caliber players, but all of that is for naught. We've still yet to see Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby, and Nathan MacKinnon all play on the same international team. And if they had taken only Canadians on the Canadian team as opposed to doing a Team North America, McDavid and MacKinnon probably get on there for the juice, the excitement, as opposed to like Logan Couture and maybe Jumbo Joe, who are towards the end of their respective careers in 2016. And granted, I know both of those guys played until very recently. Logan Couture is still playing, but you understand what I'm saying. We are very close to the end. Sidney Crosby has 1 year remaining on his deal. That extension is being worked out. Nathan MacKinnon and Connor McDavid are here. They are ready to take the mantle. They have both said, hey, I want to play on the wing so I could play on a line with Sid. That's what Sidney Crosby means to that generation of guys. Crosby wins that gold medal for Canada in the 2010 games in Vancouver. McDavid is 2015. MacKinnon is 2014 or 2013. And really quickly, you understand why this matters, why it was so imperative to this cycle to get guys back there. And the short-sightedness is what kills it, because the owners didn't want to pay for the insurance. The owners didn't want to do this. They don't want to shut the league down for a month. You will not get better exposure for your league than sending these guys to the Olympics. So real quick, the way qualifying works, the top 8 teams in the IIHF World Hockey Rankings after the World Championships this year, the host country, Italy, and then the final 3. So the teams that are confirmed in right now, Canada, the United States, Finland, Germany, Sweden, Switzerland, Czechia, formerly the Czech Republic, not Chechnya, the province in Russia, and Italy, the host country. Russia is qualified, but it is to be determined if Russia will be allowed to participate. And then these following teams are going to be in a play-in tournament at the end of August and in early September to round out the final 3 spots to make up the field of 12. Slovakia, Latvia, Denmark, Norway, France, Kazakhstan, Austria, and Slovenia. So with that in mind, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about who on the Oilers is going to be representing teams at these tournaments. So be sure to stick around. I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But now that the playoffs are over, we have fewer games. And sports are not sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I am in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day, all summer long. If you were curious and you wanted to go and look at the Four Nations face-off, they have lines for the games. You can bet right now on Canada, -1.5 goals, +100 to win So you would bet $100 and you'd win $100. They are minus 265 on the money line. Canada is the betting favorite at plus 135. So plus 135. USA is 1.75. Sweden is plus 490. Finland plus 700. So if you want to get in on the action, head on over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So when we talk about representing your country at the Olympics or at the Four Nations Showdown, it is a really crowded pool, depending what country you're representing, obviously. If you're American, if you're Canadian, you got to be one of the 15, 20 best players in the world to even get into the camp before people get cut down. There will be really talented hockey players from both nations that do not represent. You can go back to some of the more famous cuts. Infamously, Phil Kessel not making the 2016 American World Cup of Hockey team, and then tweeting, "Can't feel like I had something important to do today." Marty St. Louis getting left off the 2014 team, which ultimately precipitated his trade from the Tampa Bay Lightning to the New York Rangers. PK Subban left off that team as well, left off the World Cup of Hockey Canadian team in 2016. So it's safe to say there will be good hockey players left out. So I'm going to click on over to my notes here to make sure I don't mess this up. These three players will 1,000% be on their respective country's team. Connor McDavid will 1,000% be on Team Canada. He will be one of the alternate captains. Leon Draisaitl will be on Team Germany. He will be the captain. Matthias Ekholm, I assume, is going to be on Sweden, and he very well might be one of the alternate captains. Zach Hyman, I am almost sure, will be on the Four Nations Showdown team and likely will be on the 2026 Olympic team. I imagine if Victor Arvidsson is healthy, he will represent Sweden in the Showdown and in the Olympics down the road. These players, I think, are possible. I think Ryan Nugent-Hopkins could make it down the lineup if they want more of a Swiss Army knife type forward who could play wing, be defensively responsible, kill penalties. I think Evan Bouchard probably makes the Olympic team. Maybe not the Four Nations Showdown team, depending on how you feel about some of the other defensemen Canada has options for. And then I do think Stuart Skinner is going to have a real chance to both make the Four Nations Showdown and the Olympic team. So let's start with Stuart Skinner, because I think this is the most interesting player who might end up representing Canada. Whether or not Skinner's the starter or the backup, that's not really the point. For somebody who doesn't have a huge profile, who doesn't have a lot of games played at the NHL level, Skinner's performed reasonably well in the regular season. He has one bad playoff run and one pretty solid playoff run. And the other candidates for Team Canada in net, Jordan Binnington, yes, he has a Stanley Cup, but not the most consistent. Aiden Hill, who has a Stanley Cup, but again, not the most consistent, not a ton of games played. And then, where are we? Maybe Tristan Jarry, who has good regular season results, but if you go under the hood, not the most convincing candidate for this role to represent Canada in the Olympics. I think Evan Bouchard, it depends with Evan Bouchard. Do you want Pietrangelo? Do you want Devon Toews? Do you want Noah Dobson? It depends what Team Canada is prioritizing as far as their defensemen. Are they looking for puck movers? Do they want as much quality talent as possible? Are they going to want experience? Are they going to want size? In that middle class swing of guys, I think Zach Hyman almost certainly makes it. Everybody knows Chris Kunitz made the Olympic team back in 2010 because he rode shotgun with Sidney Crosby. And Chris Kunitz, not nearly as good of a hockey player as Zach Hyman. I don't think that's a controversial opinion, but the Oilers, unsurprisingly, as one of the best teams in the NHL, will be well represented at the Olympics and at the Four Nations Showdown. You think about some of the teams that went really far in the playoffs this past year. You look over at the Rangers. If Russia is allowed to compete, Panarin and Shesterkin will almost assuredly be there. Chris Kreider, outside chance of making Team USA. Mika Zibanejad is already confirmed for Team Sweden. Adam Fox is already confirmed for Team USA. Keandre Miller has an outside chance of making Team USA. Vincent Trocheck has an outside chance of making Team USA. Alexis Lafreniere, probably not a candidate for Team Canada, but not impossible. Capo Caco will likely be on Team Finland. Then you go down the list. You look over at Florida. Barkov is already on Finland. Kachuk is already on Team USA. Bobrovsky very well could be on Team Russia. Gus Forsling is already on Team Sweden. And Carter Verhaeghe will likely be on Team Canada. And you can just start rationalizing it out of, oh, who did the Oilers play in the conference final? Oh, yeah, the Stars. Who's going to be on their teams? Roope Hintz will be on Finland. Miro Heiskanen and Esa Lindell are both confirmed to be on Finland. Jake Ottinger will probably be the first goalie off of Team USA, but he'll have a chance. Jason Robertson very well could be on Team USA. Then who'd they play in the round before that? The Canucks. Quinn Hughes already on the team. Thatcher Demko very well could be on the team. JT Miller and Brock Besser very well could both be on Team USA. Elias Pettersson most likely will be on Team Sweden. And really quickly, you start to get an understanding. Oh, yeah. As much as I want to complain about the Oilers, as much as maybe they've have left a bad taste in your mouth based on how you feel about Stan Bowman, they are a very talented hockey team. They are going to have a really golden opportunity here to showcase some of their talent. And I wanted to save talking about McDavid, Draisaitl, and Ekholm for last, even though they're the most assured people to make their teams, because it's different. And it's going to transition to talking about the next segment nicely, so I think this makes sense to close out here. When you think about being the guy, you're going to assume that Sidney Crosby is going to be the flag bearer for Canada at this Olympics. You're going to assume that the mantra, the ethos, the idea of this is Sidney Crosby's last dance. I'm assuming if you're a sports fan to the level that you're listening to an Oilers podcast in the middle of July, or I should say the end of July, you're familiar with the ESPN documentary about Michael Jordan's 1998 season with the Chicago Bulls. Everybody knows Sid's probably not going to be on the team after 2026. He'll be the captain for the Four Nations Showdown. He will be the captain for the Olympic team, but he more likely than not is not going to be playing professional hockey after 2030. In fact, I've told more than one person, I think there's a real chance Sid does 2 more years on his next deal. This season, the Olympic season, and then a farewell tour. I think that's realistically the way he's going to lay out the next 3 years of his life, because it makes the most sense. He's accomplished everything there is to do. He has probably the most famous international hockey goal of all time in winning the gold medal game in overtime in his home country, creating one of the most painful experiences of my life as a hockey fan, because you had Zach Parise tie the game with less than 10 seconds left and give you that, oh my God, we have a chance feeling, only for Sid to go full Terminator and rip your heart out. You know, that's 14 years ago at this point, and I can vividly picture where I was sitting in my living room as I watched that pass come out of the corner to the net front that Sid banged in, and just, you sit there and that's what it's about. The spectacle, the grandeur, the attention. On a normal NHL night, there are a ton of games. When the Olympics are on and it's a gold medal game, that's it. The entire world stops. Even people who don't care about hockey, it's the Olympics. I'll watch. And that will nicely set us up for our next segment, where we're going to talk about what this means coming up next. So be sure to stick around to this episode of Locked On Oilers, where we've got your team covered every day. Thank you to everybody who is listening to this Tuesday edition of Locked On Oilers. Hopefully you are enjoying the Summer Olympics so far. I have thoroughly enjoyed having background noise while getting work done. Team USA in the group stages of gymnastics was very entertaining. There have been some really nice moments. Canada winning in rugby was pretty cool against Australia to set up a showdown with New Zealand. America's playing in the bronze medal game of rugby in a few hours. That I'm looking forward to. The women's gymnastics later today, very much looking forward to. The spectacle of the Olympics is why you love sports. And I know there are going to be a lot of people who feel bleh about the Summer Olympics. There are people who say, well, I don't really care about this sport. I don't know anything about this sport, so it's hard for me to really care. But instead, I look at it as this is an opportunity in the middle of the dead season. There's nothing going on right now in North America other than baseball. Yes, if there were an Olympics, WNBA would be going on, but being that the American women are going over there and trying to win their 7th straight gold medal, there is no WNBA going on at the moment, but the spectacle and that feeling, there are very few things in the world that make the world stop in a non-negative connotation than the summer games or the winter games. And I'm going to share a story with you. So in 2008, when I was 11 years old, was on family vacation, was in Ireland. It was pretty late at night because the 2008 games were in China, and the schedule, if I remember correctly, was kind of funky, and the games were at very weird times of the day. I was in Ireland, but China was still like 6 or 7 hours ahead. So the games would be on at, 7 in the morning, and that was middle of the day over there. But I remember being in a restaurant, and right before Michael Phelps steps up to the block for his event, they turn the volume up on the TV. The guy behind the counter turns the volume up on the TV. And I remember he put it up to 37 for whatever reason. My brain remembers that. The volume, the little thing on the screen said 37. That upset my brain because even number or a multiple of 5. And the room just goes silent. And I can remember that room was loud. It was a crowded restaurant in the middle of the day. And it went silent. And all you heard was the commentator talking through the race. And that's the type of moment you remember. Of course, Phelps won a gold medal. Of course, he won a gold medal. That's all he did. But when you have moments like that, the golden goal in 2010 created such a signature moment that really kind of set the tone on that era of hockey, that Sid was the guy. He already had the cup. He had some individual awards, but to win the gold medal as the best player on the world, on the best team in the world, in that way, on home soil, is something that you just don't get chances like that. The once in a lifetime type stuff that Gretz never won a gold medal in the Olympics on home soil. You can go through the list of guys, and that's why this petty nonsense about, oh, well, we can't risk sending them over there because if they get hurt, well, they don't care about the All-Star game. They do not care. They don't want to go. You can get as much exposure as imaginable on your sport by letting them go. You send them over to the Olympics and you have moments. The first time McDavid, Crosby, and McKinnon are on the ice together is going to be one of the most photographed images of the century. And I know that's going to sound hyperbolic. And if anything, I'm one who always says the game's going to keep getting better. The average player keeps getting better, so the best player needs to keep getting better. There will be somebody in that tier in our lifetimes again. And I think McKinnon and McDavid, I think McDavid is just a little bit better than McKinnon, but I think McKinnon's really close. I think Austin Matthews is really close. And when you think about it in that way, it creates a hierarchy. And it's one of the things that's really interesting to watch when you watch America play basketball, for instance, is how that pecking order gets sorted out, where in basketball, LeBron is not the best player in the world anymore. But LeBron called all the guys and said, hey, I want to do the Olympics one more time. And KD and Steph, I'm in. No questions asked. I want in. And then you were able to get buy-in from some of the younger guys, whether it's Devin Booker or Anthony Edwards. And really quickly, you start to get that pecking order. It's the same thing here with Canada. Sid's going to go because he's been robbed of 2 opportunities. But the mindset and the attitude is so different when it comes to hockey, because hockey is Canada's game. It's not like basketball is in the United States where it's behind football. It does well. People care, but you're not going to have star players being like, I don't want to go because I'm older. I want to take the week off. I can imagine that if Russia goes, is allowed to compete, you will see Alex Ovechkin throw on that jersey one last time because he recognizes this is probably it. Speaking of guys, Artemi Panarin, somebody who played on one Olympic team but didn't really get a full cycle. Nikita Kucherov, same type of deal. Guys who got opportunities to represent their countries on smaller stages or in World Juniors, but never got the full scope. And I am very hopeful that come 2026 in Milan, we are going with the best teams we have ever seen. I think there's a real argument. This is the best pool of American players they've ever had to select from. I think Canada's high-end talent is the best any country has ever had to select from. When you have the two best players in the world on your team, and Canada's had that luxury more than once, but you still have Sidney Crosby, and you still have some other guys who are in that elite echelon to pick from, like Cale Makar. It's crazy. And I know this is, 15, 16 months away, but I don't know how you can't be excited about this. The last few days have had me really optimistic and really hopeful for a great international tournament, even if it's kind of hokey and an NHL ran thing for Four Nations this upcoming year. And then to really kind of set the tone for the Olympics that I don't know how much buy-in you're going to get for Four Nation Showdown, like how competitive the hockey's going to be, how nasty, how intense it'll be. But the ramp up for the summer games the winter games in 26, it's going to be special. It is going to be a really special feeling to finally get them back there. You talk about 12 full years since the full NHL scope went. And that will do it for today's edition of Locked On Oilers. So if you could be so kind, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you're listening to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave the show a 5-star review. If you're watching over on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the alarm bell, get a notification whenever new content goes live. Let me know, what are you most excited about when NHL players return to Olympic play? And thank you for making Locked On Oilers your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NHL podcast. Locked On NHL provides you with a national perspective on all things NHL each and every day with national experts and local insight on every team in the league. Available on YouTube wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Until then, let's go Oilers.